What if I told you that all of your beliefs were accurate? Did the statements made about Jim Jones's life turn out to be untrue? The fact that Mama Jones is finally coming clean is simply amazing. For years, you have been wondering why Jim's life ended the way it did, why there was chaos, and why there was betrayal. Get ready, because Mama Jones Just You won't believe what I found out about the criminal. Were Jim's best friends, and did his family members secretly plot against him? Or did he just make poor choices that led to his downfall? Did they truly plan to ruin Jim's empire altogether, even if Chrissy Camron has always been controversial? This is a shocking new discovery, Mama Jones's revelations. The scope of the betrayal network and the covert actions of Chrissy and Camron that led to Jim's public humiliation are all explosive. The reality is more sinister than anyone could have guessed, save for a few unfortunate instances now. Given what you're about to learn will starkly contradict your preconceptions. Let's examine this. There is a full-fledged conspiracy at play. Get ready to hear what hasn't been told yet. You'll never see Jim Jones the same way again. After witnessing the destruction for years, Mama Jones has finally spoken out. But understand that this isn't just an O'Thurkamane family dispute. It is almost hard to accept that the betrayal we are confronting is real, since it is so deep and intricate. You are familiar with Jim Jones and his entourage. Jim has long been a controversial figure. He has made controversial decisions, gotten himself in public arguments, and of course, had a big influence on the rap industry. But if you've been following the tale, you've probably always wondered how someone so confident and strong could have ended up in this predicament. Be familiar with Camron and Chrissy, who appear whenever Jim's life falls apart. You may be asking yourself, what's new? It's the same old story, right? But the truth is finally coming out, folks. Jim's death has been a mystery for years, you see. Public humiliation, relationship problems, and career setbacks were just too much to overlook. However, when Mama Jones connects, she paints a negative picture. Was Jim indeed so completely and irrevocably deceived by Chrissy and Camron? According to Mama Jones, they did. But what's even more unsettling is the extent of this conspiracy. It encompasses power dynamics and the extreme measures people will go to completely understand the gravity of this discovery. Going beyond mere jealousy or misunderstandings, to fully understand those, Jim's life started to fall apart in a way that looked almost intentional. Despite the fact that he had everything going for him during the years when his empire was flourishing, including his singing career and loyalty, Mama Jones says she saw it all because she saw Jim's closest friends and family tugging strings behind his back. When it comes to Jim's friends and co-workers, public figure Chrissy Lynn has always been contentious and has never held back from speaking her mind. But what if she was acting as part of a bigger scheme to discredit Jim rather than out of personal resentment? The latest information about Mama Jones offers additionally, there is Camron, a well-known rap artist whose name has, let's be honest, always had a big impact on the streets. Despite starting his own business, Camron is a prime example of a power-hungry person who will stop at nothing to get what they want, according to Mama Jones. The story is not just what has been written, she said. Camron has been playing a dangerous game for years, and his ultimate goal, well, let's just say that it wasn't Jim Jones's success was never as pure behind the scenes as they appeared. What if tabloids aren't all there is to it? Over the years, we have seen anarchy. What if it was premeditated? What if Jim was under pressure to terminate his life from his closest friends and family? In addition to talking about unrelated topics, Mama Jones is exposing the truth about how Chrissy and Camron deliberately altered Jim's situation to further their own goals. And trust me, the more you understand this, the more amazing it seems. Let's first acknowledge why this is so important before delving into the specifics of how they accomplished it. Jim Jones is a key figure in the rap industry. Not just any well-known individual. Sector, a reputable individual who has shaped society. So you can be certain that there will be severe consequences if someone close to him starts to pull strings behind the scenes. The worst aspect is that this involved not just business, but also loyalty, treachery, and high-level connections. Mama Jones's next revelation will completely change the way you think about these links. In addition to Chrissy and Camron, Jim Jones felt supported by his close friends and family, whom he confided in completely. Camron, according to Chrissy, was working behind the scenes to sow down, disseminate rumors, and create chaos. And it wasn't just about drama or egos. Was he really trying to destroy Jim to build his own empire? Or was there something darker at work here? Mama Jones reveals something shocking. What connection does Chrissy's role in all of this have to the reality that Camron was preparing himself to succeed Jim? Mama Jones claims that Camron's thirst for control and power was the reason behind his deception of Chrissy. But Chrissy also felt deceived. She was forced to make decisions that would jeopardize the very foundation Jim had built, since she felt increasingly cut off from his life and job. Now, it's clear that this is not merely a simple friendship split or a romantic triangle, but rather a carefully thought-out conspiracy that has been ongoing for years. It's unexpected that Mama Jones asserts as we put the pieces together, we see how deliberate and evil this treachery was. Mama Jones wasn't just observing her son's life unravel. There was strategic harm as well as emotional harm. Every action taken by Chrissy and Camron was a component of a bigger scheme to progressively dismantle Jim's empire. The question of how much longer Jim will put up with this, and, more significantly, how far this conspiracy will go, was raised when Mama Jones's voice broke the quiet like a hurricane as she watched the people he trusted destroy everything he had fought so hard to establish. As she spoke, years of unspoken grief, treachery, and anger surfaced, revealing a previously unseen side of the story: trust, loyalty, and the awful effects that one person's decisions may have on an entire community took precedence over familial matters. Because of the glitz and glamour, people feel as though they know what goes on behind the scenes, even though they are blind to the difficulties that occur in the background. The world needs to know the truth about what actually transpired with Camron, Chrissy, and Jim. At first, Mama Jones spoke steadily yet fiercely. In the past, Jim and Camron were like brothers, helping one another out in both good and bad times. But with time, something changed. They were breathing, preparing to explore the labyrinth of deceit and betrayal that had torn Jim's life apart. With Chrissy's arrival, Jim found himself in the center as Camron grew increasingly aloof. Everything began to go wrong because she had her own agenda. Mama Jones hesitated, anguish and surprise mixed together on her face. I watched it all start, with tiny cracks here and there, as Jim would come home and tell me that he and Camron were not on the same page and that things were getting hot. Her words were powerful as she went on to explain how Chrissy's influence slowly crept into Jim's life. Chrissy would constantly bring it up as though she were attempting to cause trouble. Camron and Jim were subordinated to her authority and her idea of what ought to occur. Chrissy failed to realize that she was ruining Jim by forcing him to be everything she wanted him to be in his interactions with everyone. Instead of him being the man he once was, she wanted him to become more like her ideal of what a man should be. So she started pushing that Camron didn't simply shift when people started to change. He started to regard Jim as a stepping stone, a way to move up the game and establish his own place. Mama Jones shook her head and said, "He wasn't always like this. He was a loyal friend once, but loyalty only goes so far." Her voice was melancholy as she recounted the moments when Jim's life began to fall apart. The arrival of Chrissy made everything fall into place. In an attempt to mold Jim into what they thought he should be, they each started pulling him in separate directions. But nobody ever cared to find out Jim's desires. It wasn't the music or the business that made Jim into a shell of the person he used to be. It was Chrissy and Camron, the two people he trusted the most, who had stolen everything from him until he no longer recognized himself. I recalled Jim sitting on the couch and just gazing off into space. The mother wiped a tear from her eye because he was too focused on his friendship with Camron and his love for Chrissy. Jim was unaware that they were plotting against him and, behind his back, placing him in a vulnerable position. "This was the most agonizing part of it," she said. Mama Jones showed how Camron's relationship with Jim deteriorated, how old wounds were reopened, and how new betrayals were formed. It was now clear that the betrayal was not only about a sexual relationship, but also about a long-standing friendship that had become poisoned. Camron started to leave Jim. Chrissy was doing everything she could to keep him away from his real friends. And Jim stopped checking in on him as often as he used to, both emotionally and physically. Jim was unaware that she was in command and knew what she was doing. Jim's love for his followers, friends, and family was all the truth made Mama Jones' voice tremble a little. When it hit the fan, he was the last person to know, and when I saw it all unfold in front of me, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. This wasn't the case. He was being tested, and no one was there to tell him the truth or show him what was really happening behind the scenes. She said, "What Camron and Chrissy had done to Jim, to us, to everything we had built together was the main focus now." An important turning point in their relationship was when Mama Jones realized that Jim had changed since the betrayal, and that his behavior had changed. "I had nurtured and loved my child, but he was losing himself in all the lies and dishonesty, and I saw him transform into someone I didn't recognize. Not just the demands of his work or his notoriety, but the people he had surrounded himself with were indifferent to his welfare. Since I am his mother, although loyalty can be your greatest strength, it can also be your downfall if it is abused by the wrong people. Jim was too good for this, too devoted, and too real for these games." Chrissy and Camron's performance was superior to Mama Jones's, who stated in a steady but passionate voice, "It hurt me to see him like that, because everyone knew how to use Jim's love, devotion, and trust. He eventually paid the price." Mama Jones came to the realization that the truth had to be told, not just for Jim, but for everyone affected by the lies and deceit. As the weight of the betrayal increased daily, "My motivation is not notoriety or revenge, but Jim's right to know the truth and the world's right to know who Chrissy and Camron are." Mama Jones knew the battle was coming. But as the drama unfolded and the tension grew, they disregarded one part of the family. They also thought they could kill him and get away with it. Was still ongoing, but she was resolved to stand up for Jim, her family, and herself. The truth will soon. Now we have to talk about the chaos that ensued after Jim Jones's life fell apart. Behind the complex web of lies that Camron and Chrissy had created, the burden of treachery. This was not merely a public dispute or a celebrity feud. It was the fall of an empire that Jim had built. However, what if the individuals you trust the most turn out to be the ones preventing you from moving forward? What shall we do then? Ask Jim. First, learn about the fallout. Mama Jones claims that Jim's career suffered greatly. Thus, the emotional devastation wasn't just for show. It wasn't age or shifting preferences that were causing his music career to decline, but rather the damage inflicted by his closest friends and family. According to Mama Jones, Jim thought Chrissy and Camron were supporting him and trying to displace him. Let's start with the legal ramifications as the full scope of the treachery became clear. The results were disastrous. Jim's legal team was notified. It should not be surprising that legal action is taken when someone with such a high profile is being abused in this way. According to Mama Jones, Chrissy and Camron made a vow to sue, but not for the typical reasons such as strained friendships or personal slights. Here's where it gets really intriguing. Though according to Mama Jones, Jim was considering bringing a big lawsuit of his own to go public at one point. This would drain his cash and take his focus away from them while they persisted in their control-seeking. Lawsuits were part of a bigger scheme to ensnare Jim in bureaucratic red tape. What could have been more interesting than Camron, the master manipulator, being made to face questions regarding his involvement in this whole mess? There would have been worldwide attention if the details of the dubious activities he alleges Camron and Chrissy were involved in had been made public. However, Mama Jones claims that Jim was hesitant because he still believed that Camron and Chrissy could be saved. He tried to avoid drawing the worst conclusions about the individuals who had been closest to him. But Mama Jones, being the vigilant mother that she is, saw right through it. Hesitancy destroys careers, as we all know, and Jim made the biggest error possible. The financial crisis had already happened by the time he realized what was really going on. But let's also discuss the money lost. When someone discredits your accomplishment after you've worked for it your entire life, it is impossible to escape the financial cost as well as the harm to your relationships and reputation. Jim Jones lost not only his wealth but also his personal relationships. Mama Jones claims that Camron and Chrissy pulled strings behind the scenes, which led to Jim's destitution. While Jim was distracted by the drama, Camron and Chrissy were secretly negotiating transactions that embezzled his wealth. Imagine being extremely successful and wealthy, only to discover that your friends have been embezzling your money. Investments engage in risky business ventures and ultimately experience financial losses. Jim experienced just that. His company failed, his assets were liquidated, and his brand deteriorated. Both the crash and the drop in fortune were caused by the two persons he trusted the most. However, Mama Jones asserts that Camron and Chrissy were plotting Jim's murder. So let's not mince things. For years, and by the time Jim could see it clearly, the public outrage had already destroyed his financial security. Because of the way the internet works, once rumors start, Jim has to cope with the public reaction in addition to the legal and financial repercussions. The public was split. Some backed Jim because they thought his career had been ruined, while others backed Chrissy and Camron. The slightest whispers have the ability to quickly become a full-fledged social media inferno. As we have witnessed in countless scandals, everyone believed they had been wronged. Therefore, they were all playing the blame game. But as Mama Jones demonstrates, Chrissy and Camron were not innocent in the public's eyes. They were not just victims in the story. Rather, they were participants in this grand drama, creating their own story to appease the media. Apparatus.Jim was given a lot of the blame using false information and half-truths. Even more startling is the speed at which public opinion shifted, and many people started to question Jim's behavior. Was the entire situation his fault? Was the criticism justified? Did he start this, or was he the victim? Hinted that Mama Jones was not going to tolerate the rapid portrayal of Jim as a failure who couldn't manage his personal and professional lives. She argues that Jim was the target of a deliberate attempt to damage his reputation in addition to a personal betrayal. The last blow and then the last blow. According to Mama Jones, control, not merely the egos of Camron and Chrissy, was the real source of the chaos. You see, they wanted to replace Jim, not just watch him fail. They were driven by a desire to start again by destroying what Jim had built. Camron desired to take back his role as the game's dominant force, and Chrissy, well, she considered the individuals who were actively trying to better Jim's existing circumstances rather than merely holding him accountable for his errors. Ultimately, instead of destroying Jim's life accidentally, people who claimed to care about him the most devised a calculated strategy to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact that he is down is the worst thing of all. Still unclear what this signifies for Jim Jones in light of what we now know. Will he be able to overcome the damage caused by Camron and Chrissy? Or is it too late for him to turn things around? Mama Jones may be honest, but she will is altering the storyline sufficient? Or has the harm already been done? We want to hear your thoughts. Tell us in the comments section below if you believe Jim will rise above the ashes or if his career is doomed. Was Jim's life harmed by Camron and Chrissy, or were they merely manipulators? And lastly, do you think there's more to the story? Which are the please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel if you're moved by the gravity of this terrible reality and want to be updated on every new development in this story. Not all of the hidden levels have been discussed yet. Don't miss this special information that will soon be revealed. Even though we're just getting started, you can be sure that we'll be diving right in. Remember to set your notifications so you don't miss the next shocking revelation as we dig deeper into this and unearth more shocking information that you won't find anywhere else. Remember, this isn't simply gossip. It's about real people, real betrayals, and real consequences. Tell us what you think. Think about who is really to blame here, the actual brains behind this chaos. Let's begin the conversation in the comments below. In the context of disagreement, nobody stays silent forever. Even follow along, subscribe, and leave a comment for the shocking discovery that follows.